It was one of those rainy Monday mornings where the air in the office felt heavier than usual, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. I had just settled at my desk when I noticed the time, 9 a.m. on the dot, and still no sign of him. It was strange. Our boss was never late. We'd all heard the rumors over the weekend. You couldn't escape them in a place like this. His wife had left him, but not just for anyone, for another man. And not just any man either. According to the office gossip, she'd run off with some guy she'd met in a yoga class. A tall, ripped, incredibly well-endowed black man. The rumor mill was working overtime, and you could feel the tension in the air. Just as I was beginning to wonder if he'd even show up, the door swung open. There he was, our boss. And the moment I saw him, my heart sank. He looked a mess. His tie was crooked, his shirt was wrinkled, and he reeked of alcohol. His eyes were bloodshot, and instead of his usual confident stride, he staggered, barely keeping it together. "Morning," he slurred, waving his hand dismissively, like he could somehow wave off the fact that he was clearly drunk. Everyone in the office stared, the kind of stunned silence that only comes when something truly out of the ordinary happens. I glanced around, hoping someone else would take charge, but all eyes seemed to land on me. He made a beeline for my desk, or tried to, at least. He was swaying on his feet, and I had to resist the urge to stand up and steady him. "You got those reports from me, right?" he asked, trying to sound normal, but his words were thick with alcohol. I handed him the reports, not sure what else to do. Yeah, they're right here," I said softly, trying to make the moment feel as routine as possible. But nothing about this was normal. He stared at the papers like they were in another language, his mind clearly somewhere else. After a long, awkward silence, he let out a deep sigh and crumpled the reports in his hands. "Do you ever wonder why things fall apart?" he asked, his voice cracking. I felt a lump in my throat just hearing him. "Why people leave?" He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "She left me for him. Can you believe that? I gave her everything, and it wasn't enough." I didn't know what to say. What asterisk could asterisk I say? It wasn't my place to offer him sympathy or advice, but I couldn't just ignore the raw pain in his voice. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, hoping he wouldn't notice how out of my depth I felt. He kept going, as if he needed to get it all out. "And now, everyone's talking about it. About him. About me. They think I'm some kind of joke because I couldn't keep her happy." His voice grew harder, more bitter. "They say he's better than me, in every way." I didn't need to ask what he meant by that. The rumors had been flying all weekend, and everyone knew what he was implying. The man his wife had left him for had a reputation that went beyond charm and muscles. I started, but he cut me off before I could even finish the thought. Don't say anything. Don't pity me." He looked at me with a mixture of sadness and defiance. "I don't need your pity. I need another drink." With that, he turned and staggered toward his office, leaving the crumpled reports behind on my desk. "If anyone asks," he called out over his shoulder, "just tell them I'm taking a mental health day." I watched him disappear into his office and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The whole office was still, like we were all waiting for someone to say something, but nobody did. The whispers that had filled the office before his arrival were now silent. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the crumpled papers in front of me, trying to process what had just happened. Our boss had always been the picture of control, the kind of guy who had everything figured out, or at least pretended to. And now he was just unraveling, right in front of us. But in the end, I knew how this would go. Tomorrow, we'd all come back, sit at our desks, and pretend this never happened. It was the only way the office could keep moving. But as I glanced at the closed door of his office, I couldn't help but wonder if things would ever be the same.